Aristotle, he wrote about physics a long time ago, and even if his conclusions are not accepted today, his methods have colored and influenced our approach to this topic. So what did he think, and why did he think it? That's part one, and then in part two we'll talk about his worldview, his cosmology. First, a warning though, there are a lot of quotes here, so it gets a little heavy, and then it gets heavier. Even though our main claim is that Aristotle was a philosopher of common sense, and so we start with 3 common sense principles. Number 1, causes and effects exist. Number 2, causes and effects go together somehow. And number 3, all effects have causes, but not all causes have effects. Of course, Aristotle did not invent these ideas. And even though we're quoting him directly in this video, these ideas have been filtered through thousands of years of intellectual history, and we'll use this tradition summarized in this book as our bridge back to Aristotle. So let's get to it. Causes and effects exist. Or, in the language of scholastic philosophy, no potency can actualize itself. A potency can be brought to actuality only by the influence of a being in act. Alright, you still with me? Again, repeat to yourself, this is common sense. You come back home, and heaven forbid, but you come back home and your house is on fire. Well, what happened? Then someone says, well, your house is made of wood. Alright, that's a true fact, but that isn't really an explanation. Yes, wood burns. A stone house would not be on fire in this same way. Still, it's not really an explanation, even though wood, our wooden house, is potentially on fire. How did it go to being actually on fire? What happened? That's the question. What caused this? A match could start a fire, but only if it is a burning match can it do that. A potency can be brought to actuality only by the influence of a being in act. Something has to be on fire to light the house on fire. Or, that again was from scholastic philosophy in the words of Aristotle, of things that come to be. Some come to be by nature, some by art, some spontaneously. Obviously, then, some part of the result will pre-exist of necessity, for the matter is a part. For this is present, and it is this that becomes something. Again, we start with matter, like this slab of marble. But wait, I'm a little uneasy about some of these terms. Nature and art and spontaneous. Does that mean that some things don't have a cause? Spontaneous, and more on that later. Right now, we're talking about matter. Hit this marble with a chisel. Act on it with an efficient cause, that's the hitting. Or you could talk about the instrumental cause, the chisel itself. Something is coming to be. It's coming to be by, quote, art, a sculpture. The artist created, quote, a thing that came to be, unquote, by putting this form, the form of a woman, into that matter. And we call it a substance. We mean something different here than what a chemist means. To us, a substance is a union of form and matter. A thing that is what it is. A statue that was made by art. The apple is made by nature. But it's still a union of matter and form. It might also be green. Oh, that's really a difference, but it's still really an apple. The apple is its form, or essence. The color, that's just an accident. When we say accident, we don't mean something unintentional or uncaused, just something non-essential to this apple being an apple. If, however, it didn't just change color, but if it changed to a pear, that would be, in this example anyway, that would be a new essence, a new form, even if the color is the same. Well, we're trying to get a handle on the terminology here, causes and effects. No potency can actualize itself. Matter can be brought to form only by the influence of a being in act. So let us now define the apple. The framer of a definition should first place the object in its genus, and then append its differences. For the genus ought to divide the object from things in general, and the differentia from any of the things contained in that same genus. Now that's a little bit harder. That can be harder than it sounds. A definition consists of a general category, genus, think general, and a specific difference. Species, think specific. Notice how this is different than how those terms are used in biology. There they have fixed definition for what constitutes a family, a genus, and a species. What is the same and what is different? We said this before though, Aristotle is designing a method. For example, if your genus is food, then both apples and pears might be in the same species as fruit. But if you have a different genus, if your genus, your category, your general category is all fruit, then apples and pears would belong in different species. But then again, we're keeping our genus as fruit, then Cortland, I think that's a Cortland apples and Granny Smith apples would be in the same species, unless you change your genus, and if your genus is apples, then these two are in different species. You see, we have a method here. But whatever you are what you are because of this specific difference. And we're trying to talk about causes and effects, and it's beginning to sound a little arbitrary. So the question might be raised, why some things are produced spontaneously as well as by art, example health, while others are not, example a house. Everybody wants to be healthy, but what does it mean that healthy is caused by both art and spontaneously? If you cut your arm, you could go seek help from a doctor and the medical arts, or you could kind of heal on your own. That's not quite what Aristotle means by spontaneous. Again, we'll get to that more later on. And someone's thinking, why are you teasing that? Well, because no one's going to listen to a 25-minute long presentation on Aristotle unless you tease it a little bit. Anyway, cuts heal, apples ripen, but houses don't just appear. Wood doesn't fly together like that. Why? Because some matter is such as to be set in motion by itself, and some is not of this nature. Many things can be set in motion by themselves, but not in some particular way. Example, dancing. If you trip and fall, you will land on the floor all by yourself, by nature, but you have to choose to dance. Again, causes and effects exist. We're not saying that everything has a cause. That might be true, but all we've said so far is that some things have causes. Causes and effects also, they go together. They match up or correspond, or like puzzle pieces. They fit together somehow. And you could say that in the language of scholasticism, every agent acts according to its form. And we've already said something about matter and form. Notice that analogies are a big part of Aristotle's method. Not my analogies, his analogies. The form of a woman here and the matter is marble. But maybe you're not an artist. Maybe you work at a quarry. Your job is to cut out those marble cubes and then ship them off to the studio. Your finished product becomes the artist's raw material. Two people are working. They're both cutting stone in a way, but they're working with different tools in different ways. Still, they share the same final goal. The same final cause is for both of them to beautify the temple, working together, because everything that is produced is something produced from something and by something, and that the thing producing it is the same species as it. It's a little confusing the way it's written there, but it's something we've talked about earlier. You need fire, not just matches, but you need fire to start that house fire. But Aristotle is more interested not in burning down, but in building a house. And wait a minute, are you saying here that the builder and the house are the same species? Well, in a way, yes. And that is why it is thought impossible to be a builder if one has never built, or a harper if one has never played the harp. For he who learns to play the harp learns to play it by playing it, and all other learners do the same. The builder has the art of house building in his soul, and then he puts that art into the wood, making it a house. The builder learns his art from the houses. He abstracts the art of building, and the point here is that the art must exist first, and then he can put it into a future house. The art of house building exists first, before the house. Here's another example. Animals do not see in order that they may have sight, but they have sight that they may see. Houses in general exist so that this house can be built. Sight in general exists so that we might have eyes. That's Aristotle's view. That's his view. But is that a strong argument? Essence precedes existence. So our apologies to Jean-Paul Sartre, but you could not, here's one more, you could not talk about this basketball team if the sport of basketball did not exist. You could talk about these people as a group of humans, but you couldn't talk about them as a basketball team. And here's another example. You see an apple and you get hungry. And even just getting hungry, that would count as a change or a type of movement for Aristotle. Even if you didn't physically move, you just went from not as hungry to hungry. Anyway, the apple, that caused your hunger and your appetite, right? Well, not so fast. Why do you want it? Why are you attracted to that apple? Because you recognize it as food. If food as a concept did not exist, you wouldn't care about the apple. But it does, and you do. You want the apple, so you reach out and try to grab it. But that particular apple is accidental. Doesn't really matter if it's the 350th or the 351st apple on the tree. The individual particular apple is accidental. The food itself is the essential thing. But let's go back and focus on the house. It's obvious, then, from what has been said, that which is spoken of as form or substance is not produced, but the concrete thing which gets its name from this is produced. That concrete thing is present, and one part of the thing is matter, and the other form. In other words, you built a house. You did not invent the form, you built a house. And you did this in a certain way because every agent acts according to its form. Now wait a minute. What about your creativity? What about your individual style or expertise? Don't worry, all that stuff is still there. Those things make your house unique. They make your house special. But those things are not what make your house a house. The form does that. It comes first, and it brings us to our last, final common sense point. We've already said that, number one, causes and effects exist, and number two, causes and effects go together. Now wait, what about spontaneity? Don't worry, we have not forgotten about spontaneity. It's coming. First, though, number three, all effects have causes, but not all causes have effects. And I must admit, I really don't like the way that one came out. It's too long. I wanted to say something a little shorter. I wanted to say all effects are contingent, but that doesn't sound like common sense. What I'm trying to say here is that you strike the match, it's burning, you throw it at the pile of wood. That's not necessarily going to catch it on fire. The house fire depends on the burning match, but the burning match does not depend on the house catching fire. It's still a burning match, even if the house doesn't catch fire. Or in the language of scholastic philosophy, the cause always surpasses the effect somehow. The cause is nobler than the effect. And what do I mean by nobler? Well, the house fire itself, quantitatively speaking, has more heat, has more flame than the burning match, but it is contingent. It depends upon the existence of the burning match in order to happen. It's an effect, whereas the burning match was the cause. Or here's another way of saying it, you can't give what you don't have. That which is itself independently a cause is always prior, as a cause, to that which is only in virtue of being itself dependent upon something else that makes it so. Okay, that's a good one. So here's the question. Which came first? The block of marble or the statue? Now don't think about it too hard. Again, this is supposed to be common sense. The physical marble block existed before it was carved into a statue. That's okay. It's okay to say that. We agree on that. But just like the house, this would not be a statue of a woman unless the female form already existed. Just like the house could be a pile of logs, but it wouldn't be a house unless the form house already exists. And that female form will continue to exist whether or not the sculptor ever finishes the marble statue, whether or not the marble is taken out of the quarry. So in one way the slab exists first, but in another way the form exists first. Oh, and here's another question. Why did they bother getting that slab out of the quarry in the first place? Why didn't they just get buckets of sand or something else? So that's what we mean when we say that the effect is contingent and that the cause always surpasses the effect somehow, that the cause is nobler than the effect. And that's what Aristotle was getting at when he said objects without qualification prior and better known are those further from sense. Now the most universal causes are furthest from sense, and particular causes are nearest to sense. Recall what we said about potential and act, what we said about matter and form. Form grasped by the mind, whereas matter is accessible to the senses. But your senses can only feel one particular thing, whereas your mind knows the universal. And that, at long last, brings us to chance and spontaneity. First, though, we observe that some things always come to pass in a certain way. Other events are by chance and spontaneity. And Aristotle's example, more houses. For instance, the house builder faculty is in virtue of itself the cause of a house. We already said that. Whereas the pale or the musical is the incidental cause. So your house builder builds houses. That we know. He might be pale. Maybe by chance you hired one who is musical. He whistles while he works or plays the flute while he works. So add this new cause to our list of causes. We had the material, the formal, the efficient, the instrumental, the final, and now the incidental. Remember our distinction, the difference between essence and accident. The fact that some whistling came along with the house, well, that's just dumb luck. And that's what Aristotle means by spontaneous. It's not that the music comes from nowhere. The music comes from the person whistling. But the fact that the one you happen to hire whistles, that was spontaneous. If you had hired a musician to whistle or play the flute, that would be a totally different situation. The sculptor needs a chisel. He reaches into the box and grabs one. And it happens to be green. The accidental color is green. It happened by chance. Now later on in the chapter, Aristotle describes a situation where you're out running errands, your wife asks you to pick up the dry cleaning, and you just happen to stop into Dunkin' Donuts for a coffee while you're there. You come back and your wife says, "Oh, I didn't know they serve coffee at the dry cleaners." Well, it just happened to go in there. Well, really, his example, Aristotle's example, was when you're going out around town to invite friends to a banquet, and then you stop by your tenant farmers to extort money from them. Okay, yeah, he was an aristocrat. And I might have been reading that wrong, so please let me know if that's how I read it. Anyway, do you remember earlier when we said that health could be restored spontaneously? This example I understand better. This one I like better. The example Aristotle uses here is about a man who goes out for a haircut. And as he walks to the place to get his haircut, the fresh air and the sun's heat promote his health. So you could say that the haircut caused his health, but that's just an incidental cause. It just happened. It was just dumb luck that he happened to walk out on a nice day where the fresh air and the sunlight helped him get healthy. And from those examples, we can clearly see that things do, in a way, occur by chance. Chance is an incidental cause, but strictly it is not the cause, without qualification, of anything. And why not? Because the cause surpasses the effect. Form and matter. Form surpasses matter. And then later on we read, spontaneity and chance, therefore, are posterior to intelligence and nature. You're playing a really intense board game with a couple other people. You have 2 dice. It all comes down to this final roll of the 2 dice. Now, is that chance? Well, yeah, there's an element of chance there. There's also an element of law-like behavior. There's a certain set probability of you getting a certain result there. Also consider this. The fact that you're rolling the dice, that chance, that's something that was designed into the game. So there is chance posterior to intelligence. Hence, even if it's true that the entire heavens are due to spontaneity, it will still be true that intelligence and nature will be prior causes to this all, and of the many things in it besides. Well, there's a view of the universe for you. Somebody hires, I don't know who, but somebody hires this expert builder to come and build a house, and that expert builder is building the house and then absent-mindedly starts to whistle. And that tune that he's whistling, that's the entire universe. But it's still, even if that was true, there would still be cause, there would still be intelligence before the chance. Because any form of intelligence, if it's in the system whatsoever, it will bubble up to the top because, again, effects are contingent. The cause always, no matter how small that little match is compared to the giant fire it starts, the cause always surpasses the effect somehow, is always nobler than the effect. And that's true, even though, as we've seen, there could be multiple causes, as there are in this one final example. When such arts fall under a single capacity, as bridle making and the other arts concerned with the equipment of horses, these arts all fall under the art of riding, and this under military action and under strategy. All right, so we make bridles so that soldiers can ride horses as part of a military strategy. Okay, I get that. In the same way, all arts fall under yet others. In all of these, the ends of the master arts are to be preferred to all the subordinate ends, for it is for the sake of the former that the latter are pursued. And just as we wanted to beautify the temple, so that's why we hired the sculptor, and that's why we got him some marble, here peace is the goal of the state. Peace is pursued through a certain strategy. That strategy requires a cavalry. That requires making some bridles. But if our leaders decided on a different strategy, we might stop making bridles and start making ships. Again, it's supposed to make sense. 3 common sense ideas. Causes have effects. They go together somehow, but they are not equal. Now in part 2, we'll try to put these ideas together into Aristotle's view of the universe, his cosmology.